Penny, the Marine veteran who choked and killed Jordan Neely on the New York subway last week, will face second-degree manslaughter charges and surrendered to authorities this morning.
Also, former President Trump filing notice of an appeal following guilty verdicts in the E. Jean Carroll civil suit. So a lot to unpack here in the Big Apple, so let's get right to it.
Joining us now, two New York experts, former New York Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik and former Manhattan prosecutor and Newsmax contributor Ameer Benno. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Ameer, what do you make of Penny's charges?
Well, it's all going to come down to whether it was reasonable what he did. And that sounds simple, but it's a very fact-specific question here. The questions that the DA is going to have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Did Penny have an actual belief that Mr. Neely was about to use physical force on somebody else and that his own use of physical force was necessary? And would a reasonable person in the same situation, knowing the same things that Neely knew at that time, have acted the same way? So that's a very fact-specific question, and as these facts unfold, we'll have more information about whether it's appropriate to charge him or not.
Yeah, it raises a question about citizens' arrest as well. Commissioner, this from the New York Post, a 66-year-old woman who witnessed the Jordan Neely subway chokehold death says that she's praying for ex-Marine Daniel Penny and even thanked him for what he did. I want to get your reaction to that.
Well, listen, I think a lot of people out there feel the same way. I was looking online this morning. Jake Buquette, who was an NFL player that went to the Army Rangers, he put out a post this morning to Penny and anyone like Penny in New York City. Don't get involved. Never get involved, because, you know, you could be the one that the government then targets for getting involved, for defending someone. I think that's really a shame. That Penny's going through this process, but Ameer would know better than I do. But I'm a little confused right now how the DA could bring charges that he did without the toxicology being back, without the ME's report being in. I haven't heard about any of those things being brought forward, and if they're not in yet, how did they make a determination how this guy actually died?
Yeah, Ameer, we'll pose that question to you.
Yeah, well, so that's a very true. Obviously, there's a causation aspect of this, which means that was he in fact the chokehold? Did that cause the death? It was my understanding that there was that information, at least preliminarily. But of course, Commissioner's correct. If that's not the case, then yeah, I don't know how he would be able to bring this. I think obviously this is a lot of political pressure. Originally, he was going to present the case to a grand jury, let a group of people, 16 to 23 people, make the decision, hearing all the evidence. Should we charge this person? Was it reasonable? Was it unreasonable? People make the decision, hearing all the evidence. Should we charge this person? Was it reasonable? Was it unreasonable under the circumstances? And instead, Bragg capitulated to public pressure and said, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to demand his arrest right now, and we'll follow up with maybe a grand jury presentation at a later point in time. So, you know, he's shown himself to be somebody who is obviously listening to, he's shown himself to be somebody who is obviously listening to the political pressures and caving to them. This may be just more of the same.
Commissioner, what precedent does this case set in terms of going forward? And New Yorkers would often help another New Yorker if something happens. But now, if you're going to get charged for it, are people going to take a step back and let whatever's happening happen?
Well, listen, I think this is going on all over the country, right? Whether it's New York City or Chicago or Seattle or Atlanta, any of these places where the surging crime rates and murder rates, are out of control. People are scared to death, and people don't want to get involved because they're afraid of being targeted by the government. I think it's terrible. I think Penny was in his right mind to defend not only himself, but the others that were there. If he felt the need that their lives could be in danger, that they could be in danger of in any way. And given Neely's past history, which obviously Penny did not, if he felt the need that their lives could be in danger, that they could be in danger of in any way. And given Neely's past history, which obviously Penny did not know, but now we know, given his past history, he could have gone off at any point in time and really hurt somebody.
Yeah, we'll be obviously following this case. I do want to pivot now to former President Trump filing notice of appeal in the E. Jean Carroll civil suit. Ameer, is this the right decision from former President Trump to appeal this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a question whether it's the right decision politically to do it, which I think it is. But it's also whether legally there's merit to it. And again, I think there is. I mean, first, there's a big challenge to whether this Adult Survivors Act in New York, which really just blew open the statute of limitations and lets people reach back 30, 40, 50 years to bring claims against people who now they can't defend themselves because witnesses have disappeared, people have died, evidence is gone. Whether that offends due process. Second, the jury was anonymous. It really sort of handicapped the defense from being able to do their due diligence in selecting appropriate jurors for the case. And then there's a lot of evidence that came in that was what they call propensity evidence, which is it doesn't have to do with this particular offense. It says you've committed other bad acts in the past, so you must be a bad person. But we're going to let that in because you're a bad person. We're going to assume that you committed this offense. And a lot of that evidence was in, and whether that was appropriate to come in or not is something that the appellate court should look at.
Yeah, we'll be following this case as well. Bernie, Kerik, Ameer Benno, thank you both for coming on. We hope you have a great weekend.
Happy Mother's Day.
You, guys.
Thank you. All right.